RPG Maker dropped almost 30 years ago, making game design accessible to anyone willing to learn its relatively simple UI. This had the natural effect of producing a lot of low-effort nonsense and simple, derivative games that ultimately failed to become anything interesting. The eager would-be developer grabs an outdated edition on sale, explores the default assets, maybe places some events. It's good for a laugh at first, but it quickly becomes apparent that even in their simplest forms, games can take many hundreds or even thousands of hours to put together. And all that time, the amateur developer is fighting with the gnawing sense that their efforts might be better spent learning proper code and using a real development platform. If you're going to put years of your life into a game, shouldn't it be done right? Game Maker and Godot are right there. Why bother with this buggy 2D mess of an engine? And that's about where things tend to peter out. Learning a programming language is a gigantic obstacle. Working on a more powerful platform means your carefully altered SNES sprites aren't going to cut it.
Wow! Even better than Mama!
Nobody's going to take the thing seriously if you don't have screen shake and hit pause and sexy art and way too many lighting effects. So why even bother? Let's just give up. But every once in a while, someone sticks with it and plugs away at their RPG Maker project long enough to get it over the finish line. Fantastic. But that's hardly the last hurdle. For 30 years, the RPG Maker scene has basically been an abyss. You make something and put it out there, maybe post it on Reddit, Twitter, or an RPG Maker forum, and then you wait. Sometimes, if you're really lucky, a 2014 Facecam guy posts a playthrough of your game and it's famous forever. Or, failing that, maybe some secluded corner of the internet finds the thing and it gains a cult following. But that's like catching a bolt of lightning. Fear and Hunger had a pretty small fan base until last year. What if that was as far as that series ever went? So much of the RPG Maker library is largely undiscovered. How many diamonds are lying out there in the rough? Well, I've been trawling those waters. In my journey down every rabbit hole I could find, I've discovered the Wooden Ocean. It makes me feel a bit like the person who found the Voynich manuscript. For the first few hours, it had me struggling to decide whether it was completely brilliant or total nonsense. It wasn't until quite late in the game that I realized that that's what it was going for, that this ambivalent tension is part of the process. The developer, Leif Ian Anderson, has clearly poured several years of his life into this project, and while it sometimes reflects some creative priorities that feel like they belong in another universe, it's also a deeply personal work, exploring the creative process through an analytical lens that often feels more like a kaleidoscope. What I can say for sure is that for 75 hours, I got a tour of the inside of a stranger's soul, and you can't really put a price on that. Before we really get going here, I want to take a few seconds to thank a viewer and fellow YouTuber Rilko, who provided footage of a couple of scenes that I wasn't able to get on my own. They're starting up a new channel that is currently focusing on the Wooden Ocean, so if you want to know more, check out the link to see their stuff in the description. Wooden Ocean begins by prompting us to choose from 2 of 15 elements. We're given very little information, and it's not even clear what some of the elements are. Fire and ice are here, sure, but what the heck are carbon and thread? Why does Philistine have a different confirmation text? We do get a bit of a hint. Each element comes with stat buffs and debuffs, which should clue you in. Our elements are going to be the foundations of our build. We're told that these choices are permanent, but that's not completely true. There are respecs available later in the game. For now, we'll pick carbon and radiation. With the benefit of hindsight, I can say that all of the elements work, but some are definitely better than others. We are then given our choice of 5 difficulty levels, from Romantic, the game's easy mode, to Infinite Nightmare. I'm always filled with dread when I come up against something like this, and unlike our choice of elements, it is permanent. The harder difficulties sound a bit obnoxious, but we're no wimp. We've been gaming since we were a twinkle in our daddy's eye. With the serene self-assurance only possessed by the totally ignorant, we choose Normal. It's nearly midnight. A teenager named Simon has sneaked out to meet up with some friends. The kids have made a strange discovery out in the woods. This area is their usual hangout, but tonight, as if by magic, a mysterious well has appeared, emitting an eerie light. Something strange has come over the boys. Obeying some mysterious force, they grab Simon and toss him into the abyss. Improbably, he lands in what appears to be a bedroom, but everything looks a little off. Instead of the soft, organic colors of his home, everything here is indistinct, with these bizarre glowing edges. None of it looks quite real. A book on a nearby shelf makes mention of a city called the Beach, built as an in-processing area for heaven. This information is dryly rattled off with the cadence of a historical record. The door unlocks, and Simon steps out into total darkness. He wanders a dreamlike space floating in a misty void, like something out of You May Nikki. A few bookshelves are filled with religious screed, but none of it really makes any sense. Phantoms emerge from the darkness and begin pursuing Simon, but a voice instructs him to return to his room. There, he meets a very tall woman who seems shocked that he's able to speak with her. 42 years later, we step into the role of Violet, who has come to the edge of the world to meet Simon, a lord of these lands. Her brother, a warlock named Marcus, has gone missing. Retracing his steps has led Violet here, and she's hoping Lord Simon will have some answers. South Cottis is a tiny village by the sea, filled with medieval-looking people going about their medieval-looking lives. We quickly learn that here at the edge of the world, it's always night. The wooden ocean, the gigantic forest that blankets this entire continent, is crawling with monsters, cutting the few towns out here off from each other. A bridge once connected North and South Cottis, but it's suffered some damage, cryptically acknowledged as the forest's doing, and Master Jahan the Earth Mage will need some time to repair it. Violet, we learn, is a witch. Forsaking the typical route of potion brewing and ritual circles, she wields the raw power of the elements, dressing and fighting like a man. Her magical talents render her immune to most disease and poison and allow her to quickly regenerate from even serious wounds, making her practically a demigod compared to the townsfolk. Against the advice of the guards, who are helpless to stop her, she ventures into the wooden ocean, looking for a route to North Cottis. The forest is, like everything else in this game, delightful to explore. We have a general idea that we should be going north, but a quick look around reveals that we're in a gigantic open world. We don't have to go anywhere. The gentle music out here really lends to the atmosphere. While the game's maps are constructed to varying degrees from free assets, Anderson has made everything his own through clever use of photo filters and lighting. These assets were probably drawn by dozens of different people, but very few of them ever look out of place. The developer calls the style dark acid, and I can't think of anything more appropriate. It's like staring at the ceiling at the end of a long, introspective trip. 3 a.m. Mazzy stars playing in the other room. Shadowy phantoms stalk the forest. We approach one, curious to see exactly what's happening here, and are thrust into an encounter. Good, a chance to check out the battle system. The game uses a fairly standard RPG Maker battle engine. You've seen this first-person view in these menus before. Where it differs is the sheer number of systems bolted on top of it. It shouldn't work, and sometimes it doesn't, but I played this game for 75 hours, and it never quite got old. Attacks in Wooden Ocean usually have cooldowns and consume one of 3 resources: mana, stamina, or sometimes health. Stamina is depleted by physical actions and recovers quickly. Mana and health recover slowly, but can be helped with potions. But those potions don't work immediately. They require some forethought when choosing to heal, and they make it harder to claw our way back from taking a huge attack. What's more, low health will massively debuff a character's stats, especially their accuracy. Enemies typically have a lot of health, and in many cases, much higher stats than our characters. What this means is that we're never really able to mash basic attacks to win a fight. Every turn of almost every battle requires at least some strategizing. It's one of the few games I can think of where the guard button does something more than waste a turn. Our chosen elements, carbon and radiation, make an odd pair, but not necessarily a bad one. Both elements rely on our magic stat. Carbon, it turns out, is the magic of blood and bone. As a carbon witch, we spend health in addition to mana, and we can learn attacks that deal physical damage and debuff the enemy's defense and dexterity. We can also learn to put up a damage-reducing wall of bone and give our party a heal over time effect. Radiation is much more unusual. Lacking any real source of direct damage, this element comes with some short-term damage over time spells that give our enemies cancer. Cancer is a 10% debuff to many stats, so that seems pretty useful right off the bat. Radiation's true power lies later on with the quarter, third, and half-life abilities. Late game, shaving off such a significant percentage of the enemy's health with a single attack is an excellent way to build tempo. Carbon and radiation don't make the best combination, especially late game when all the enemies have very high physical defense, but this is what we'll be sticking with for Violet. As for weapons, we've got a pretty broad selection to work with, even in South Cottis. Each weapon type comes with its own skill set. Spending AP will unlock attacks and maneuvers that tend to follow certain themes. Staffs are magical and defensive. Knives do a lot of damage and rely on dexterity. Swords are for tanky characters, while greatswords are more offensive. We found a sickle and a barrel back in town, so we decided to give that a go. Sickles belong to the scythe class, and scythes are hybrid attack and magic weapons. They don't do a ton of damage, but their attacks hit all enemies. The real star of their skill set is Ritual, which can greatly boost a character's damage output for several turns. AP spent on one weapon skill is AP you can't spend on another, meaning that it's a good idea to pick something and try to make it work. But we're not locked in until we actually start spending a bunch of that AP, so let's not worry too much about it just yet. What were we doing? Oh, right. The core of our routine is Osteoclast, a single target attack that reduces enemy defense. The animation looks like we're just shooting bones at these poor monsters. For now, they're pretty easy, and that's really all it takes. Looping around to North Cottis would be pretty simple, but it's an open world, so we spend some time wandering around, seeing what we can see. We spot a well, like the one Simon was thrown down in the intro. This well leads to the sewers, an underground network of waterways that spread all over the Wooden Ocean. They are our first look at the verticality of the world. Everywhere we go, we're standing on 2 or 3 or even 4 layers of stuff. Geological strata holding countless little secrets. But it's all a bit too much to dig into just now. Instead, we head west until we find a gravel road. Here, we meet Oldman, a man who seems really eager to foist a ghost town off on a witch. Witches aren't exactly common, especially here at the edge of the world, but there's not much time to think about it before he lets something even stranger slip, that he's trying to become an angel. Before we can really make sense of this, he teleports away. Violet's reaction tells us that this is not something that happens very often. Just a little further to the west, we discover our ghost town, and it is exactly what it sounds like. Ghosts are naturally inclined to follow witches, so Violet's the perfect person to put in charge. We find Oldman hanging out with the ghost overseer, and we assign our unemployed ghosts to work construction for now. The 5 basic industries available at the moment are construction, science, mining, golem crafting, and shipbuilding. Construction is arguably the most important, as it's what drives population growth. The mines will generate gold, which we can collect from Oldman. The library does scientific research, opening up more efficient town progression. The golem crafters will make a golem who can sometimes join our party, and the shipbuilders will build a ship, which we can use to sail the seas. There's a map here, and for the first time we're able to get a look at how big the edge of the world really is. To the south, we can see Lasik City, which is where we sailed from to get to Cottis. Elsewhere, who knows? There are many strange things to look at, and no clear indication as to what they might be. Here we can also find the talent screen. This is a really, really big area that quadrupled in size while I was playing thanks to the developer's intense work ethic. As we level, we earn points that we can spend on talents. These wind up being the most important part of character progression. For now, we hold off, not really sure what to get yet. One thing we may notice while exploring the talent screen is mention of intelligence and charisma. These are 2 non-combat stats that apply only to Violet. Intelligence increases slowly every time Violet reads a new book from a bookshelf. Charisma does the same thing every time Violet speaks to a new NPC. To my knowledge, these don't do a whole lot save for some dialogue around the ending, but the developer has expressed interest in expanding them further. There's also a respec available here via a statue on the west side of town, so don't worry too much if you mess up building your characters. The game is unforgiving, but it's also forgiving. Yeah, that makes sense. We need to wait for more ghosts to show up before we can do anything else here, so for now we head back east through the forest till we come to North Cottis. 2 guards on the west side of town give Violet a hard time about her magic powers. Witches, we learn, generally deal with cauldrons and curses. They don't go stomping around in the field blasting people with radiation. That'd really make Violet more of a sorcerer, except female. A sorceress. She prefers the term direct witch, but it's clear this sort of talk bothers her. She mentions that the 2 seem educated, and they're surprised to hear the word from her, asking her if she is too. She doesn't quite catch their meaning and, confused, wanders into town. Violet heads for the mansion, hoping to track her brother down. Talking her way past the sassy receptionist, she eventually meets Lord Simon, who at first fails to recognize her. Witches, it seems, don't develop their colorful hair until sometime after they've gained their powers. Violet's color is particularly rare. Most are aquamarine, like her mother. Violet explains that she's looking for Marcus because somebody close to the both of them has died. We soon learn that it was her mother. Alas, Marcus is no longer here. He's gone on to a place called the Infinite Hotel, which he says is where everybody goes when they die. Violet is puzzled by this. She's never heard of the place, and Simon doesn't know much more. He suggests that she check the library, as Marcus left some of his notes behind. As Violet steps away, Simon accidentally calls her Mesra, her mother's name. This, we can learn through speaking with the townspeople or reading books, is also the name of the god of this world, though these are two separate entities. Mesra is apparently a common name around these parts. In the library, Violet discovers that her brother did indeed leave a letter. I found the architect's scripture. I can't believe it was here in Cadiz all along. From carbon and oxygen we crawled from obscurity, creating meaning and mastery of ourselves. When the final star died, we created more. This is missing the expression line. Was this actually written before the hotel was constructed? If so, then I'm one step closer to finding the cure for my sister's disease. To Cadiz Temple I go. This is the first Violet is hearing about any disease. Witches are immune to most natural ailments, so if something's wrong with her, it must be pretty serious. So then why is she only just hearing about it? Cadiz Temple is here in town. With no other leads, that's our next destination. But things don't go smoothly as hoped. The priest there says that ever since Marcus came by, things have become chaotic. He refuses to explain further, handing Violet a key and sending her into the basement. As might be expected, the catacombs below are crawling with monsters. They're a bit stronger than the ones outside, so we need to make better use of our abilities in order to effectively deal damage. In our case, we cast particle radiation to inflict the cancer debuff, then use prepare carbon, which will boost the power of our next spell. After that, we can throw out an osteo class, which deals a nice chunk of damage and further debuffs the enemy's defense. If you find you're stuck doing 1 damage at this point in the game, you probably need to start stacking debuffs this way. It's the key to clawing a tempo advantage out of the game's challenging encounters. Violet eventually finds a locked door, and using the scapula key she got from the priest, steps through it to meet a mysterious hooded man named Alex. Alex has been locked down here with his sister Amelia for quite some time. Luckily, they're a solid lead, as they both know Marcus quite well. In fact, Amelia's madly in love with him thanks to the effects of a potion she drank. For the past 6 weeks, she's been torturing her brother with terrible love poems about the man. Marcus has since left, but thanks to the love potion, Amelia can track him by scent. Alex explains that the only way to reverse the obnoxious effects of this potion are to track down Marcus himself, giving the trio a common goal. They decide to join forces in the search. But it's not as simple as walking back out the door. Alex and Amelia are trapped here by a curse, seemingly for many years now. Violet rightly observes that this doesn't make a lot of sense, but Alex remains cagey about the specifics. He's also cagey about what is obviously a flat-screen television in his bedroom. Violet has no idea what the device is, but Amelia mentions it can show pictures. Strange. In order to get the two siblings out of the catacombs, Violet will need to help them defeat an evil ghost that's cursed the both of them. The ghost can be found another level down, past another maze full of monsters. They're getting stronger the deeper Violet delves, but things are a bit easier now that Alex can lend his daggers and Amelia her bow. There's no need to stick with these weapons, they're just what the character started with. Any character can use anything, and at least at the outset, everyone's stats are the same. It is, however, highly recommended that you at least keep one bow user in the party. Bows reduce a character's threat rating, meaning they'll rarely be targeted by monsters, and simply not getting attacked is some of the best defense you could ask for. Offensively, no other weapon can compare to the bow. Its impale skill ignores enemy defenses, and bolstered by aim and mark, it will deal increased damage with a high chance to land a very powerful critical hit. Bow users can also learn Poison and Toxic Arrow, which are very useful damage over time skills. Later on, Heart and Headshot deal incredible damage and can stun-lock enemies, and almost all of this runs purely on stamina. This all means that bow users are generally number 1 in terms of damage, and also bring a ton of utility to the table. They even have elemental arrows, if you're more magically inclined. Down another flight of stairs, the trio encounters what is usually the game's first boss, Cursed Souls. While this creature was a match for the two siblings, with Violet's help, it is quickly dispatched. A strange light bursts forth from Alex and Amelia as the curse is lifted and the pair regain access to their magic. Here, we get to pick new elements for them. We choose metal for Alex, as I wanted to make him the party's tank, and metal has some useful defensive spells. I wasn't disappointed in that choice, but I did often consider whether Philistine would have been better. The Philistine element reduces the character's maximum MP, but grants many physical attack skills. It's something to consider. For Amelia, we choose Thread, which turns out to be a school of magic revolving around luck and fate. Thread offers a number of excellent debuffs, as well as some healing and attack magic, and it can function very well as a magic user's primary attack element. Do be warned, however, Thread relies on the luck stat to deal damage, and luck does not naturally increase as you level. It can only be raised with talents, rare consumables, and equipment. As Alex is a tank in our playthrough, the twin daggers are a poor choice. We'll start him out with a mace instead, though we'll eventually switch over to swords. Amelia keeps her bow, slotting into a physical DPS and utility role not unlike Violet. In all, this party configuration was serviceable without ever feeling broken. Research suggests that there are indeed very broken combinations out there, and the developer actively encourages exploiting them. So, happy hunting if that's your thing. Violet is confused to discover that the pair know magic. That's not a common talent for humans, and it soon comes to light that these are not humans. Amelia casually explains that she and her brother are demons, magical monsters who eat people. Magic comes naturally to demons. Witches, Alex explains, only acquire their power through acts of great evil. More than anything, he seems offended that a person who chose to do such a thing would think to look down on a creature who was only acting according to its nature. Violet remains skeptical about getting involved with demon kind, but Alex reminds her that Marcus was doing the same. He came here 6 weeks ago and transformed the pair from something monstrous into their more human forms we see now in an apparent effort to help them. He had to travel on to the Infinite Hotel, and they'd have gone with him had they not been trapped here by the curse. The curse, we learn, was laid by Mesra herself, the architect of the hotel and a being that many revere as a god. This leads once again to some confusion around Violet's mother. Different people, same name, Alex assures us. At this point, Alex has grown tired of answering questions. It's been more than a century since he breathed fresh air, and he'd really like to get back to it. He guides Violet down a passage to the sewers, and eventually the three emerge near Cadiz. A lot of what Alex says is pretty confusing, and a little insulting. He repeatedly asks Violet why she's dressed like a man. Her mercenary garb is decidedly unfeminine, and what's more, he says she's not dressed like anyone on the roster. What could that mean? On the way back to the inn, Violet stops by the temple to report to the priest about what she found. Unfortunately, he senses the true nature of her companions and begins to chant a summoning spell. So, Amelia eats him. 1 minute he's there, and the next he's gone. This is too much for Violet, who flies into a rage, regretting she ever freed the pair. Sure, that priest was a jerk. Sure, they were probably going to have to kill him to stop him from attacking them with a summoning spell, but he didn't deserve to be eaten. Neither demon can see what all the fuss is about. Eating people is simply what demons do. But in the interest of keeping the peace, they agree not to eat anybody else. That night, Alex explains that he has a good idea of the next place to look. Marcus was apparently seeking Mesra, probably the god, not the person, and he would have headed for the mines north of Cadiz. He said if he wasn't back in a week, that she captured him. Of course, we know from his letter that it was the architect he was after. That may be why he came to meet the demon siblings. These two seem to know plenty about this hotel and the architect he's apparently looking for. They directed him to the mines, and now that they're free, the trio can follow after him. While Violet sleeps, we see a scene playing out elsewhere. We overhear that the Divine Tower is offline and that we are good to set up. Unfortunately, he is being protected by her, the one that caused problems for us before.
Fucking pronouns!
There are too many pronouns and quotation marks to make sense of it all, but we get that the speaker is hoping that someone named Valez gets called up soon. The camera pans through a dark hallway filled with a long line of identical men in suits. The voice continues, saying that he's got to make sure that the Divine Tower stays offline, as the person he's speaking to is still too far away to move openly. He also mentions that the Gateway apparently still has a sister, one that's not in any of the books, interviews, or movies. The camera pans through a void of swirling colors until we see the speaker, a man in a suit with a television for a head, addressing some kind of huge monitor. This place, he says, is fucked. This is where the game properly begins. If you choose to skip the introduction, you'll start right here in Cadiz with Alex and Amelia already recruited. As I said before, I don't expect this game is for everyone, but if you're feeling the pull or you just want to support an indie developer who's doing something unlike anything else that's out there, I urge you to go pick it up. It's available on Steam. My main playthrough clocked in at about 60 hours. It could potentially be many more depending on how much you get sucked into exploration. From this point, there will be major story spoilers as we go through the rest of the game. You have been warned. We're bound for the mines, but before we go, there are a few things we might want to get up to around Cadiz. Just east of South Cadiz is another mine. This one's smaller and much easier to tackle. It makes for a good starter dungeon if we're wanting to feel out different equipment options or test the party a bit. Once we're feeling a bit more confident, we head out into the woods east of North Cadiz. Here, Violet finds a priest aiding a group of guards in a losing battle against a horde of monsters. She jumps in to help, leaving the men grateful and awestruck at the trio's abilities. Completing events like this does more than just earn us brownie points. The forces of darkness are actively trying to wipe out humanity here in the edge of the world. Just as our ghost town grows over time, so too do the enemy armies. It takes a very long time, especially on the lower difficulty settings, but if things come to a head, some of the game's towns could be attacked. If we're not there to help, they could wind up completely destroyed. There are ways to prevent this. Every monster we slay reduces the growth of enemy forces. Defeating bosses, including the mini-bosses spawned from these pentagram symbols on the ground, is a much more effective means of weakening the enemy. Completing quests in various settlements helps, and every once in a while the plot will hit a story beat that further drives back the forces of darkness. The talent menu offers even more ways to swing things in our favor. One talent dramatically cuts the growth of enemy forces. Another will rebuild all destroyed towns and prevent them from being sacked again. The enemy armies gather in strongholds around the world. They tend to look like dark towers with an evil red glow. Approaching one of these will trigger a series of extremely high-level battles. If Violet wins, the enemy will be dealt a heavy blow. If all the strongholds are cleared, there's no longer any major threat to the populace. I took the talent that reduces the enemy growth rate. I went through the story at a fairly normal pace and destroyed any pentagrams I found. Just doing this was enough to keep anything bad from happening. I never had to defend any towns or destroy any strongholds. Your mileage, of course, may vary, especially as the developer's constantly making balance tweaks. The guardhouse in North Cadiz features a staircase descending down into the sewer level. Here, both the guard and the town's poorer residents have made something of an undercity called the Hollows. There's plenty to do here, but of particular note are the guard barracks and the arena. The guard captain is a man with many deep-seated issues surrounding his sexuality and substance abuse. If we're willing to endure his manic outbursts and entirely heterosexual infatuation with Alex, he'll hand out some quests. The first few are simple, but they become dramatically more difficult as we work through them. The arena offers a chance to earn prizes and fame, and that fame has tangible benefits. The game features a robust and deeply mysterious combat psychology system. It essentially serves to buff or debuff the combatants on either side depending on who has the psychological advantage. We can track our status on this front by the character portraits in battle. If the party looks smug and confident, they'll do much better. If they're neutral, nobody has the advantage. And if they look worried, we are substantially debuffed. Alex always just looks sort of bored or irritated, and Violet's a little hard to read, so I found it best to use Amelia's portrait, as it's the most expressive. Buffing and healing the party can usually pull them out of a mood spiral, and stacking debuffs and damage on the enemy will usually gain an advantage, though this can be difficult if there's a level gap. Combat Psychology gets bonus if we've completed the arena challenges, and we can also buff it by buying the experience skill under Erudition. Erudition is basically a big list of generally useful passives. Most of them aren't too impressive, but you'll want 1 or 2 accuracy buffs on your hitters, a spell haste and mana recovery buff for your casters, and these status resistances are pretty broadly useful later on. West of the Hollows, Violet passes into the sewer tunnels, inhabited only by monsters and the occasional lone weirdo. One such weirdo is the Alchemist, who sells a variety of potions, including some that can summon a helpful ghost. The ghost is a 4th party member. We get to choose their element and skills and equip them with whatever we like. However, summoning the ghost gives all party members a 20% stat debuff. I didn't think this was worth it for most of the game, but I may have been wrong. For now, we'll decline to get a ghost buddy. There's a talent available that removes this penalty, if we ever decide we really do want one. Up above, along the west side of the river just outside of town, we find a house with a little armored guy in it. This is Shoal. Shoal sells keys. All keys. We'll learn more about this enigmatic figure later, but do take note of its keys. It's possible to find some of these as we explore, but it's a needle in a haystack, and Shoal's prices aren't too bad by the time we'll need most of these. Further west through the sewers, we find Eldric's tomb, the last refuge of an exiled hunter who was buried with all of his gear. This is one of many completely optional dungeons, and mostly serves as a nice place to score some equipment with electrical properties, including a piece or two that allows the wearer to use the electrical element. Elements gained via equipment are lost when it's removed, and points spent on skills aren't refunded. However, equipping another item that grants the same element will allow us to once again access the skills we purchased. I found I had no need of this, as the elements my party had were sufficient for our adventure, but I could see some of the more utility-focused elements being quite a good addition to the right party. On the east side of the tomb is a Poetry of Bronze. This micro-dungeon within a dungeon is one of dozens. Each Poetry of Bronze is centered around a single puzzle. Completing it will grant some equipment and a puzzle piece. It's a good idea to collect these puzzle pieces, as they can be used to acquire powerful rewards later. Similarly, there are combat-focused micro-dungeons called Poetries of Blood. These generally give your party a specific debuff, but all experience in the location is multiplied. Completing them grants demonic shards, which work like puzzle pieces, except they're way better. While this content is all optional, it's a very good idea to do as much of it as possible. The Wooden Ocean never really lets up in terms of challenge, and there are a few points, particularly near the end, where the difficulty curve turns into a brick wall. We're going to need all the levels we can get. With all of that done, we decide to head to the North Cadiz mines. Here, Violet learns that they've been overrun by orcs, and it's all the town guard can do to contain the problem. We venture in, finding the upper levels aren't too challenging after completing our various diversions. The mines, like many other places, sport a number of side paths that lead all over the place. We can get to the sewers from here, but we decide to focus on our main goal for now. With the upper level cleared, the party is due for a reward from Captain Resnick. Violet also observes that she could probably also double dip by pressing Lord Simon for a reward as well. At least this is a point where Violet can find common ground with her demonic allies. In the lower levels, Violet comes across a coffin with a person hiding in it. At first, this just seems like a random goofy NPC encounter, but he mentions something about collecting morality. When Violet reacts with confusion, he mentions that some chapter in Wooden Ocean had some guy kill orcs or something around here. Then he comes across a person in a coffin. When Violet still doesn't understand, he realizes that she's uneducated and tells her to leave. This only adds to her confusion, and Alex gently leads her away from the strange person. Many of the NPCs Violet meets throughout her adventure engage in these sort of non-sequitur conversations. Some of them are honest-to-God jokes from the developer, but a lot of the time there's more to it than that. It's almost like there's something going on out here, and everyone's in on it but Violet. The lower levels are as orc-infested as the upper. There are a lot of side tunnels leading to various distractions, including one that looks like it must be the way forward. A huge door with a warning written on a note outside of it. We hit the save point nearby before we give it a try. This is the Demon Door 2. Flanked by the Eye of Truth and the Eye of Youth, it is by a wide margin the strongest enemy we've seen so far. At level 12, equipped as we are simply no match for it. But that's okay, this is not the way forward. It's actually another side path, and one we should make note of. Exploring the rest of the mine, we discover a route that leads down to an even lower level. The orcs here are stronger, but we've been training hard. Finally, in the bottom of the maze, we discover an ogre who's been leading the orcs. A weak attempt at diplomacy fails, and we're forced into another boss battle. Ogres have a weakness we should learn to exploit. They're very powerful but have weak stomachs. When poisoned, they'll lose their turn far more often than other types of monsters. Amelia uses her poison arrows to stunlock it, and the party beats on the helpless monster until it's dead. With the ogre defeated, the path further down is open. The trio head deeper and deeper through layers of rock until they emerge in a bizarre place. Carpeted walkways ring strange towers seemingly built out of books. It all floats above a void of faintly burning blue and red. Alex explains that this is the physical edge of the world, and the hotel is not far. Amelia's nose says that Marcus is close. At one end of the sprawling network of walkways lies the entrance, marked by a pair of neat little bedrooms. The party decides to take one final rest, but Violet wants answers. Alex explains that there is an impossibly distant planet called Earth, and it is the home of the primordial gods. The Infinite Hotel is where they go when they die. He goes on to say that there are over 3,000 worlds connected to the Infinite Hotel, and that the Wooden Ocean is just one of them. Furthermore, the year is not 1228, it's 47 billion. Violet refuses to believe such a preposterous story, leading Alex to shrug his shoulders and give up. But there's something in his wording that goes unsaid. He seems almost exasperated that she wouldn't know all of this already. The girls decide to share a room, and once they're alone, Amelia explains to Violet that the love potion is worn off. She reveals that she hasn't said anything for fear that Alex might abandon the search for Marcus, and Violet would be left to find him on her own. She knows how much the sibling bond means, and moreover, she admires Violet's courage, so she doesn't want to leave her in the lurch. This moment is nice because we don't otherwise get a lot of characterization for Amelia. Alex is by far the chattiest party member. Violet serves as our point of view and often has some wry commentary to offer. But mostly, Amelia pretends to be madly in love, or she'll just say one of her random nonsense words, murder being the most commonly heard. Outside of occasionally checking Alex when he gets out of hand, she rarely has much to say. She's otherwise just our monkey cheese Imoto. I'd love to hear stuff like this more often. If I had any advice for the developer, it'd be to give us more Amelia content. I'd love to know what makes her tick beyond just the few brief moments like this one. Following their rest, the trio head through the door, leaving the Wooden Ocean behind. The Infinite Hotel is, both obviously and improbably, an actual hotel. Hallways stretch endlessly in either direction, lined with doors that lead to identical rooms which look very much like the one a young Simon found himself in after his friends tossed him down the well, all the way back in the intro. There are monsters and treasure here, and the levels of both appear to increase as you get farther from the entrance. I was never able to find an end to it, and I once got so lost that I had to reset, so be careful if you go exploring. Maybe bring a pen and paper to map the place out. But we're not here to check out the rooms. There's a staircase, which leads to the Poetry of Rust. The place appears to be a copy of North Codice, drained of color and devoid of life. It floats in another cloudy void, feeling somehow unfinished. One key difference is a gravestone, shrouded in burning ectoplasm. From it, Violet hears a voice. "I love you, Mommy." Without stopping to think too hard about that, she leads the demons closer to the temple, where they spot a strange masked figure resembling the woman Simon met so very long ago. It is an angel. Alex warns Violet to keep her distance. Marcus is just behind that door, but the trio has zero chance here, and for the first time, he actually seems frightened. He begs Violet to turn around. The Wooden Ocean is a big place. Maybe with more experience and better equipment they could come back, but as it is, this is simply impossible. The smart thing to do would be to listen to him, but we can fight the angel if we want. The boss is, as advertised, very high level. We try our best, but we can't put a dent in it before it wipes out the party. But that isn't to say it's actually impossible. If by some quirk of your build you are able to defeat this angel, the game won't stop you. I'll be showing what happens if you do, but it'd spoil a few things, so we'll leave that for later. Stymied by this seemingly impossible enemy, Violet reluctantly turns back. She won't abandon Marcus, but pointlessly dying isn't going to help him. Luckily, we don't need to go too far to find something else to do. Backtracking a bit to a side path in the area just before the hotel, Violet enters the Devil Harp Maze, which can easily be navigated by following the left-hand rule. After tricking a demon for some treasure, the gang leaves via the eastern exit to the Divine Underground. This is another tunnel network that leads all over the place, similar to the sewers. An exit to the northeast leads to the Divine Forest, where Violet is promptly mobbed by the place's holy protectors. After fighting their way free, the three reach a large structure with a few people outside. A woman hits on Alex, and we learn that he's actually taken, immediately banishing Violet to the friend zone. Too bad. The building, as it turns out, is the Divine Tower. Alex and Amelia know the staff here. Leda, the receptionist, has a conversation with the demons that largely goes over Violet's head. From what little she can gather, this place is some sort of administrative complex that deals with a lot of lawyers. Alex tries asking Leda about Marcus, but she clams up when she realizes that Violet is a local, citing something about confidentiality. The group decides to take a rest at the tower. Marcus and Amelia head off to the kitchen, while Violet checks out the library, looking for any information on diseases that might affect witches. Alex eventually shows up and coaxes her downstairs. "There's booze here," he says, "and this stuff actually works on witches. That's rare indeed." The booze, as it turns out, is laced with psychedelics strong enough to break through Violet's magic-enhanced immune system. She's entirely unfamiliar with the concept of acid, but apparently it's a pretty common way to relax around here. A man named Roland comes by, apparently another employee. Violet, intoxicated for maybe the first time in her life, is completely out of her depth as Alex talks shop with him. Roland mentions that the tree satellite on the roof is broken, and as a result, the internet and cable are down. Alex is surprised to hear that such services are legal here, but Roland explains that it's all thanks to a legal loophole. He also mentions that Marcus is suing someone very high up, but he's not sure who. Violet can't make heads or tails of this, so Alex tells her to close her eyes and imagine a time when she was happy. Instead, she remembers something rather unpleasant. A speaker, denoted by purple text, who tells her that she's an embarrassment. Combat is seemingly something left to men in this world, and Violet has violated a cultural taboo by learning to fight in secret. The unknown speaker, likely one of the witches she grew up with, threatens to tell her mother, saying that Marcus is the one who ought to be the heir. Violet eventually comes to, having blacked out and gone a little wild. When you're playing with high-octane substances and unresolved personal trauma, this sort of thing can happen. Luckily, all is quickly forgiven. Violet learns that the Divine Tower is an outpost for people like Alex, a bridge between the wooden ocean and pseudo-heaven, which we will note is distinct from pseudo-heaven. What all that means is a little unclear, but a hazy impression of how this world works is starting to come together. If the hotel is an afterlife, and this world is simply one of many that leads to it, Alex and Amelia are higher beings who seem to see Violet's world almost like a workplace. At the front desk, Leda asks Alex to help Roland out. He agrees on the condition that she share more information about Marcus. Quid pro quo, Clarice. Violet and the demons fight their way through the monsters roaming the upper levels of the tower until they reach the roof. Here, they find Roland and, unexpectedly, the Ghost Town's golem. The cause of the malfunctioning satellite dish, which is disguised as a tree, turns out to be a dimensional demon, a creature more powerful than any we've defeated so far. We managed to kill it, hitting level 24 in the process. Roland is grateful and a little surprised at how well Violet did. Dimensional demons are apparently no laughing matter. With that out of the way, Roland is able to get the Divine Tower back online, restoring internet access to the wooden ocean. This seems like a strange thing to do in a medieval fantasy world. Violet certainly doesn't get it, but the fact that our town's happiness and economy have jumped way up suggests that our ghosts may not be simple sword and sorcery phantoms. Maybe that's why they sent the golem. They wanted the internet back. We get another cutaway scene. A purple voice converses with a green voice. Purple is surprised to hear that the dimensional demon was slain, and even more surprised to learn that it was Violet who did it. She asks Marcus if this is even possible. Marcus simply responds that Violet is not what she seems. As agreed, Leda gives Alex a hint. Marcus is tied up with some business involving angels. Real ones. That explains what we saw in the Poetry of Rust. Here, Violet has to ask what is meant by real, and Alex lays out some terms. The wooden ocean is known as realistic, unrealistic reality. Alex, Amelia, and the Divine Tower staff are from unrealistic reality. The hotel and the aforementioned angels are reality itself. Violet still doesn't understand, but Leda says she's told her too much as it is. She and Marcus may be the only people in this sector, that is to say, the only locals, who understand that their world is not reality. This, then, is what is meant when we hear about educated people. The locals, like most of the townspeople in Cottis, live in the wooden ocean in a state of ignorance. Realistic, unrealistic reality. Creatures who travel between worlds, such as Alex, Amelia, and the educated people we've met here and there, and seemingly also the ghosts in our town, are from unrealistic reality. Angels, then, must be a tier above that, the same layer of reality as the ancient gods from planet Earth that Alex mentioned. It's a lot to mull over. Thankfully, the revelations don't often come this quickly. We decide to clean up some side quests and do some housekeeping. If we want to have any chance of reaching Marcus, we are still going to need to become many, many times stronger than we are now. We've been gaining levels, but it is slowly becoming apparent that levels are not the main measure of strength in this game. Each level grants a point of growth in one or two stats, which is pretty measly compared to the rapidly scaling numbers we're up against. The fights just keep getting harder, and grinding doesn't feel like it's gonna cut it. Despite natural stat growth being poor, levels are still very important as they grant AP to buy skills and TP to buy talents. Combined with equipment upgrades, there are always massive power boosts just around the next corner. Throughout our adventure, we'll find candy, another important source of advancement. Each piece of candy permanently raises one stat when used on a character. Something to consider before gobbling it all up is that New Game Plus will reduce all of our stats by 90%, but we keep all the candy that's still in our inventory, meaning it may be more useful in subsequent runs. If we're inclined to do a second run, that is. We can purchase talents in the Ghost Town. It's a good idea to hold off until we feel like we need one, as there are many and not all are created equal. Nor will every talent suit every playstyle or party composition. What I can tell you is that stat buffs and elemental resistances are almost always a good idea. Radiation in particular is something we will need to resist to stand a chance in the late game. Speaking of the Ghost Town, anytime we get lost or stuck, it's a good idea to come back here and build it up. It has a fast travel point that'll be up and running as soon as the town reaches tech level 4, something that can be raised over time by assigning ghosts to work in the library. Otherwise, it's only a short walk from North Cadiz. The town will naturally attract new ghosts as time passes, at a rate determined by the town's construction level. This can be improved by spending money on new tools with the foreman or hiring a new ghost from the pool of unemployed. We can always dismiss ghosts from a job and hire them on elsewhere, so if our town ever has any unemployed and we're not sure what to do with them, we can put them on construction. There are no drawbacks to having a high population, and we'll need as many ghosts as we can get to really whip this place into shape. Additional ghosts can also be found by exploring the world. They look like these transparent purple idols, and they can easily be spotted by the light they give off. Gathering them up is the fastest way to improve our town, so don't slack on exploration. As we grow our economy and population, crime will begin to go up, which will hurt our income via taxes. Assigning ghosts to work as police officers will reduce crime. We can also set how strictly they operate, essentially reducing happiness to reduce crime. The best thing to do here is just to hire a lot of cops and then tell them not to do their jobs. You know, like in real life. This is a joke, please don't arrest me. Remember how enemies are gathering their forces? Well, we can raise up an army of ghosts to fight them. This will also come in handy during a couple of story events. It's probably the least important thing in the beginning, though, so don't worry too much about neglecting it until the time comes. The church allows us to select a religion, be it Mesraism, atheism, scam, or murda. Each offers a different benefit and will change some of the dialogue the random ghosts used. I picked murda because murda is life, but any of these are good. The shipyard is necessary for unlocking the late game. Here, we can assign ghosts to build us a ship. Once it's built, we can sail around the world's dark oceans, making exploration a lot easier and unlocking many new locations. The ship itself also serves as a character in any nautical battles we may get into, so continuing to level it up once it's been built may be a good idea. I cannot stress this enough. Level up your shop. Doing so will fill it with better stock and grant you a larger discount. There is a point of no return in the endgame, and beyond that point, your shop is going to be the only place you can buy literally anything. If you neglected it, you will suffer. Ask me how I know. Inside the mine, there's a golem, a magical robot who looks kind of like Missing No from Pokemon. This golem is way more important than it seems, so don't forget about it. Assigning ghosts to work on it will allow you to level it up and get better equipment, which can only be purchased here. Just like with Alex, Amelia, and your potion ghost, you can build it however you like. As with the potion ghost, my advice is to consider giving it gravity or water if you aren't using these already. Both are invaluable for utility and tend to work well even if the golem winds up lagging behind in levels. Earth is also a solid choice for the same reason. Our golem, unlike our ghost, can't accompany us everywhere. It'll show up unexpectedly during a few story beats, helping out in difficult battles. In my run, I never really did anything with it, and it made a few sections quite a lot harder than they had to be. Don't be like me. The mine, as previously mentioned, is the lifeblood of our town's economy. Assigning ghosts to work here generates more income, which we can collect by talking to old men in the inn. As the mine grows in level, we'll be able to explore deeper and deeper inside of it, fighting mini-bosses and even breaking into ancient dungeons full of loot and experience. Our golem can accompany us here, so it's a good place to test out its capabilities and figure out how to synergize it with our party. NPCs may occasionally drop by our town. They're easy to spot because there usually aren't humans here. These, along with the ghost bartender, have more quests on offer, and they're usually for more than just the rewards. There's no level scaling in this game, and some areas of the Wooden Ocean are currently impossibly dangerous. But these quests serve as guideposts for getting around to level-appropriate content. One of these quests sends us up north, toward an abandoned settlement. Alex tries to get Violet to turn back, but Amelia accidentally lets slip that she and Alex, back when they had their demonic forms, once laid siege to this place, eventually killing and eating everyone inside. Amelia's her usual straightforward self, but Alex seems ashamed of the whole thing. It prompts a bit of an argument about morality. Exploring the town, Violet meets the ghost of one of the slain citizens, who claims that it was a witch who brought the demons here in the first place. Perhaps predictably, this turns into a boss battle. Are we the baddies? Proceeding into the castle, Violet finds the demon Rostov, who helped Alex and Amelia raise this place. Like they once were, he's now cursed and unable to leave. Unlike them, his nature has not changed. With Rostov dead, we're free to snag his loot and whatever doodad we were sent here to find. A journal? Heading east along the road from the Divine Tower, we find a shop staffed by a ghost who warns of the dangers of this place. Alex advises him to get a posting in the Divine Tower instead, but he explains that he's working out here to try to move up in the hotel and get his wife resurrected. Alex says he ought to forget it, it's going to take centuries. Violet tells him that's a cruel thing to say, and he explains, seemingly from experience, that a century is far longer than people think it is. A comment from Amelia makes it clear that Alex once had a partner named Rosaline, who he has similarly been separated from. This explains a lot about the guy, worn down by decades of grief and thankless work into a creature whose only remaining emotion is sarcasm. It certainly makes things awkward for Violet as well. While she and Alex could barely be called friends, there's been a dash of romantic tension here and there. But how can a passing interest peppered by constant argument compare to years and years of star-crossed tragedy? Heading east down Wooden Road, the trio start to see people fleeing the town of Wooden Edge. The place has been taken over by a man named Valez, a hardcore Mesra worshipper who wasn't good enough for heaven. They advise Violet to stay away, but nuts to that, we're looking for side quests. One of the fleeing merchants, a man named Royce, has been left behind and asks that the three simply take him back to Wooden Edge as it's too dangerous to go anywhere else. Some distance down the road, Violet meets Valez and his men. She's allowed to pass, but Royce is detained. However, things don't go well for the man. He's summarily executed for selling drugs to the community.
But Black Dynamite, I sell drugs to the community.
This doesn't sit well with Violet, and she confronts Valez about what he's done. Alex, realizing that the group is far out of their depth, is uncharacteristically eager to apologize. Valez agrees to forgive the trio if they complete a task for him, retrieving pillar fuel from a nearby dungeon. This sounds like a repeat of an early quest we did in Cadiz. The pillars keep monsters from wandering into town, but periodically need refueling. Alright then. There's an oppressive atmosphere in the town, which appears to be inhabited solely by the educated. It seems that Valez is using the place to farm morality, enforcing strict adherence to the worship of Mesra and purging any unseemly elements with extreme prejudice. His goal is to be elevated to angel status, and presumably his Emerald Knight flunkies hope to ride his coattails to higher heights. We quickly learn that the whole thing is a trap. Valez is sending Violet to her doom, hoping to avoid wasting morality on 3 unnecessary kills. They of course resolve to kill the would-be angel, but here, outnumbered and unmatched, it won't be possible. Violet would need an army. Luckily, she has one. Or rather, she can build one. Assigning ghosts to work in the barracks in town will raise our military force. When it reaches 300, we can roll back in with an army and put paid to that smug jerk. Oldman agrees that taking out Valez would be in everyone's best interests. It'll take a while to recruit enough ghosts, but that's quite alright, as construction of the ghost ship is completed. We build up our military as much as we can and set sail, looking for adventure and hopefully some new recruits along the way. While on the hunt for more ghosts and experience, we come across the Temple of Mesra in the woods around Cadiz. It's accessible early on, but it's so well hidden that we're only just now stumbling across it. Deep in the temple, Violet discovers a demon that mistakes her for her mother. Its situation recalls Alex and Amelia's in the crypt, or Rostov's in the castle. What exactly is going on with these demons? Why would Mesra seal them down here? And why do they keep landing right in our path? Violet gets lost in a memory after the monster is defeated. She once had a servant lead her into a forbidden chamber, the Hall of the Dead. But there are no dead laid to rest here, just a tree hanging inexplicably over a red-blue void. The servant cries out. The pair have been discovered, and the servant's daughter's life will be forfeit. As we fade to black, a red voice croons, "My sweet disappointment, I've been too nice to you." Mesra? It's possible, but not certain, and as usual, we're left with more questions than answers. Violet heads back to the North Cadiz mine and takes out the demon door, which opens the way to a treasure room that houses the demon bow, a powerful upgrade for Amelia. It's sort of an incidental treasure, but I'd like to call attention to it here as it's the most powerful weapon I ever found in my run. Remember Master Jahan, the Earth Mage who repaired the Cadiz Bridge? There's a second arena in his basement, and now's a great time to clear it out. In addition to 3 new ghost recruits, we snagged the Dragon Shield for Alex, as well as the Reaper's Scythe for Violet, which doubles her magic stat. Like the Demon Bow, we'll be using these items for the rest of the game. Violet sails the ghost ship south to the isolated Yamen farm, where she's tasked with killing a powerful monster that threatens the town. This turns out to be pretty easy. Like the encounter we had with the guards and the monsters east of Cadiz, completing this event sets the monster armies back quite a bit, contributing to the defense of the town and towns all over the world. East of Wooden Edge lies the frozen ocean, a snowbound maze. This area feels a little unfinished, and it's a bit more experimental, being a massive grid of rooms rendered in 3D with hidden dungeons and other secrets scattered around. There's not a lot of story content out this way that I could find, though there is a town at the far end. Still, it's a good example of how the game hides huge chunks of game-changing content around every corner. Exploration is almost always rewarded in the Wooden Ocean. Returning to the central part of the continent, we explore the sewers until we come to the Water Temple, which seems like an area we ought to have done much earlier. Oh well, we can snag some treasure, stomp a few bosses, and grab a ghost recruit or two. In the nearby Lost Tomb, we meet a man in red armor, who turns out to be the Poet of Blood. He's lost a demonic shard and sends us to find it for him. When we return it, he promises to buy us a drink the next time we're in Wooden Edge. This is a good time to clear up as many poetries of bronze and blood as we can find. They're not necessary, but now that we have the ship, we can visit the Isle of Bronze. Here, we find a sprawling dungeon complex and a palace full of doors which require puzzle pieces that we've been getting from poetries of bronze to unlock. Most house treasures or useful shops. Down below, we find Shoal, the little key vendor. He's here with his golem, Sholem, and ours as well, trying to kill a certain monster. We do wonder just what else the golem gets up to while we're not around. Violet decides to team up with them, and the six eventually find another dimensional demon in the depths of the void. This demon claims to know Violet, saying that he was at her ritual but she doesn't remember him. The demon says he was worried this might be the case and that her second ritual must not have gone as planned. He says he'll return with some memory crystals and fix her right up, but Shoal interrupts him. He's got a job to do, and there's no choice but to fight. All this adventuring has done us a world of good. We pulverize the demon in just a few turns. Shoal takes off, giving us a puzzle piece for our trouble. We pass a crowd of awestruck ghosts to discover the legendary Flavor restaurant. Flavor the chef is cooking up a batch of orphans.
I season my meat. Blow up your taste buds, man.
Once again, Violet is horrified by the tastes of her demonic companions, but the chef is mostly just annoyed. He complains about dim-witted locals and boots Violet out of the kitchen. Left to her own devices, Violet chats up the ghosts hanging around the place. We learn that the Wooden Ocean is the only sector of the Infinite Hotel which follows RPG conventions. The fact that we're leveling up by killing monsters is, apparently, diegetically taking place in the game world due to the nature of the sector. The power people acquire in this way isn't limited to the Wooden Ocean either, making this place uniquely dangerous. People here can, with a lot of effort, grow powerful enough to become dangerous even to higher beings. Upstairs, we bump into Roland again, who says he's so grateful for Violet's help that he's put in a request to have her admitted to pseudo-heaven. It's never quite explained what it is, but the fact that he says it's RUR makes it seem like a sub-afterlife for locals. Downstairs, Flavor and Roland chat with Alex and Amelia. They seem confused as to how the trio have become so powerful so quickly. Even here, where RPG mechanics are in play, people shouldn't be shooting up the ranks like that. Alex agrees that it's weird, but he says it's something that's been happening ever since he met Violet. Roland is also surprised to hear that Violet has two elements. We learn that to gain their first, witches must perform a ritual involving what we can assume is human sacrifice, and to gain a second, some even greater atrocity is required. Flavor is amused that Violet would have the audacity to complain about a few orphans, given what she must have done, but the truth is, she doesn't remember doing it. Violet, meanwhile, has a strange dream. She finds herself in the hotel room Simon once fell into, but steps out into a forest of evergreens that have inexplicably taken on autumn hues. She walks the carpeted pathway, finding graves wreathed in flowers that impart unpleasant messages, suggesting that Violet is a user and an enabler, that Mesra died by her hand, and that Violet once had a son, whose death may have kicked this whole thing off. It puts that talking grave back in Poetry of Rust into a new perspective. At the end of the path, Violet finds the young Simon, who warns her that his angel is coming. Somewhere else, Alex contemplates what he is and what he's become. Once, he was a demon, unable to choose, but now, in his human form, he knows he could resist his terrible hunger if he put his mind to it. Let's imagine now that we're strong enough to try to save Marcus. We're not, but fellow Woshin YouTuber Rilko was, and they sent me a clip of what happens if Violet enters the Infinite Hotel and defeats the Angel. Unfortunately, it's still not enough. Violet is struck by a powerful burst of magic and blacks out. She awakens in the Infinite Hotel, wandering alone through its halls until she comes across Roland, who informs her that she must have died. Luckily, she's kept her human form. The lights go down and the two make their escape. A letter reaches Marcus, informing him of Violet's passing and that he is now heir to Mesra's estate. Alex and Amelia are in North Cadiz, searching fruitlessly for Violet. When it becomes clear that she's dead, Alex swears that he will go back to the mainland and pull her out by hand if he has to. What that means isn't clear. Annoyingly, this alternate ending only raises more questions. We'll simply have to keep it in mind as we rewind time and decide not to go confront Marcus's angel. Violet heads back down to Simon's place, wanting to speak to him about the dream. He isn't home, but a secret passage in his room leads down to a bizarre chamber full of motionless statues of the man. Alex realizes that this is a ghost highway, like the one they just came from. But unlike the others, this one looks handmade. Simon, being a local, shouldn't know about these, much less have a homemade one in his basement. Of course, we know that Simon isn't a local. We know that he came here from somewhere else, cast down into the Infinite Hotel on the orders of an angel. Violet recalls, vaguely, that her family has long owed Simon a debt, as he saved her mother from something, but it's not clear what. There's another note here, written in Marcus's handwriting. It's from last year. The disease has taken hold of her body. I was too late. Forgive me, Violet. I failed you. If I had known about this earlier, I would have stopped it. Why didn't you tell me? Why? Why did you have to trust her? Don't you remember what she did to our sisters? They all died because of her. You win, monster. You win. But not for long. Simon emerges from the darkness, explaining it was Marcus's wish that Violet be left in the dark. He ignores Violet's demands, telling her that he's always hated her, but after he learned what she did, he resolved to kill her. And so he sent Violet to the hotel, hoping the angel would do her in. Unfortunately for him, she wisely turned back at the last second. He asks Violet who her artist is, the one that made her, the one that gave her the power to consume the souls of the dead. But Violet doesn't remember. Distracted by the question, she doesn't notice Marcus in the darkness. Violet is struck by a thread spell, and everything fades to black. But in the darkness, something grabs hold of her. As thanks for repairing the tower, for restoring access to YouTube and Netflix, some entity grants her a second chance at life. She awakens alone in a strange rust-colored place inhabited by a few ghosts and a being we've seen once before in a cutscene, the TV lawyer. He's the one who saved Violet. He asks Violet if she's innocent. She responds with confusion, and he tells her to seek out his servant before returning to gaze at a portrait of an angel. The servant is a shopkeeper, who urges her to take care and not mind the gaze of the watchers. Stepping outside, Violet enters a carpeted forest. Tall, masked beings gaze at her through the red foliage, watching her every move, commenting on the nature of the world in a way that suggests that Violet alone may be imbued with the power to manipulate the world in ways we've always taken for granted. At the risk of stating the obvious, Violet is the player character, and we, the player, grant her power when we assume her role and play the game. She finds the TV lawyer again at the end of the path, where floating platforms house more of the figures, a choir of angels serving as judges and jury. This is the Symphony of Carbon, and it seems the wooden ocean itself is on trial. The lawyer, it turns out, is the one who gave us the ghost town. He summons Alex and Amelia in their true forms, but Violet fails to recognize them. The symphony renders its judgment. Repent, train, return, destroy. Violet doesn't understand what any of this means, but as the angels depart, the lawyer gives her instructions. Head for the Red Temple to the southeast and seek repentance. She is then sent back to the Wooden Ocean, awakening in the Divine Tower. Alex and Amelia, it turns out, are waiting for her. Having had their own interactions with the court, they're now unable to tell Violet what is going on. Because the people of reality, beings far beyond their understanding, are betting on what she'll do. They can only tag along and help with the fighting. After a quick stop to battle the Kraken, Violet heads to the Red Temple. This is the Poet of Blood's counterpart to the Isle of Bronze. Here, demonic shards grant us access to chambers filled with treasure and other prizes. Of course, the poet's not home at the moment. He's over in Wooden Edge, so we go to meet him. The Poet of Blood, or Pob, is hanging out with his girlfriend, Bobadope. Violet reassures her that it's a cool name and not stupid at all, and then she and the poet get drunk while the trio hang out. It gets a bit awkward when Boba-Dope insinuates that Alex and Violet are dating. This is the problem with being sober around drunk people, especially incredibly powerful drunk people. You can't exactly get mad at them for overstepping. After a rest, the trio head back to the Red Temple. There's a small crowd gathered, eager to see the woman who was on television with the Symphony of Carbon. They crowd around Violet, demanding to know how she became so powerful so quickly. The demands turn violent, and it looks like it's about to get hairy, but Pob arrives and obliterates them with a radiation attack. The attack leaves Alex and Amelia temporarily paralyzed, so Violet meets with Pob alone. She explains what happened with the symphony, though she barely understands any of it. Pob explains that while he has built many dungeons for the Wooden Ocean, he still doesn't comprehend the greater forces at work. It turns out that the repentance Violet was sent here for involves a device called the memory extractor. We get confirmation that whatever Violet did to gain her second element required some deed so terrible that she erased her own memory. To repent, she'll need to reclaim it. We once again see the TV lawyer, speaking to a woman through the portal. He isn't pleased about what she's told him. He'd prefer to kill Violet and Co. now, but the voice won't let him. He can't kill Violet, but that doesn't mean he's powerless. He calls forth a puppet made in her image and sends her out to interfere. We learn that Marcus was at the Red Temple just a few days ago and went through a door in the basement. Perhaps he too sought the memory extractor. The door is guarded by a powerful demon, and unfortunately we'll have to defeat it to get through. The boss is too difficult for now, so we decide to finish some preparations before going through. The first of which will be dealing with Valez. Violet uses the fast travel crystals to warp to the Wooden Edge, where she finds Valez giving a sermon in the town square. Perhaps a little rudely, she decides to accuse him in front of God and everybody of trying to kill her. He plays dumb, so Violet gives a signal and our ghost army teleports in to join the attack on Wooden Edge. Violet and the demons are joined in battle by several ghosts, Oldman, and the Golem. This was way harder than it had to be, as I hadn't leveled the ghost army up much beyond what was required, and I had never leveled the golem at all. But by now our core 3 are quite powerful, and I've got the hang of the mechanics. We chip down one of Alice's knights, then Brutus, then dispatch the man himself. With the town's leader slain and the Emerald Knights routed, we have conquered Wooden Edge, adding to our ghost town's economy and weakening the armies of monsters all over the edge of the world. Not everyone in town is happy with this turn of events. Valez was not well liked, but plenty of people were willing to endure a theocratic police state if it meant scoring points with an angel to be. In Machiavellian style, Violet kicks most of the biggest loudmouths out. Better to deal with them now than wind up like Valez later. Wooden Edge doesn't have robust mechanics like the Ghost Town does, but it's still pretty amusing seeing everyone either very glad to be rid of Valez or low-key mad at us for ruining their chances of being an angel's lackey. Next, we sail to a town out on the west edge of the map called Lampless. There's not a ton to do here, but we can check the shops, score a side quest or two, and head into the woods to explore. There are a few mini-dungeons, including a strange underground complex that serves as a hub for ghosts. They don't seem terribly interested in dealing with the living. Continuing through the forest, Violet comes across an art gallery. This place features works by real-life artist Ken Foreman, which stand in odd contrast to the game's distorted pixel art. In real life, or maybe I ought to say on Earth in the present day, Foreman is publishing a webcomic called Simply Detailed on Tapas, which I've linked in the description. It's an unusual series that certainly feels of a piece with the Wooden Ocean, highly stylized and not fitting comfortably in a single genre. In the basement, the gang is confronted by the green-haired woman who lives here. Another witch. Her name is Lady Green, Witch of the Wooden Ocean, and she says she works for Violet's mother. She recognizes Violet, but soon learns that Violet has no memory of her. When she discovers that Alex and Amelia are demons, she seems to assume that they've somehow got control of Violet and things turn ugly. They get even uglier when she transforms herself into some kind of a plant monster. Oh well, we know what to do with monsters. Violet explains after the fight that such a transformation only happens to witches who have consumed too many souls. Alex says it's the same for demons. The process drives both witches and demons violently insane. We learn from Lady Green's diaries that she is hundreds of years old. However, she's been battling memory loss the entire time. She claims that she once knew Lord Simon and that they even had a child together, but that she no longer remembers him. Her diaries claim that she once knew Lord Simon and that they even had a child together, but little by little, she no longer remembered him. Alex is surprised to find a summoning square in the basement. These aren't supposed to be used by the uneducated. Violet explains that witches use them for summoning and transportation. When quizzed about why she took a boat here instead of teleporting, Violet cannot supply an answer. There's an abstract demon lower in the basement, and it wants souls. It gestures at a painting, making the surface of it ripple and warp. Violet touches it and is transported to the poetry of paint, an abstract world blooming with blue and white. Past walkways swarming with powerful monsters, Violet finds a being rendered in a strange monochrome, the poet of paint. 2 glowing eyes gaze down at her, and it speaks in purple text. Behind her, in similar black and white, is a gigantic portrait of Violet. The poet seems to know her. The poet tells Violet that she was not meant to see this, and asks if the poet of Rust sent her. Violet tells her that she's been sent by a demon to look for candy. The poet observes that she must have been sent by the angel she wrote. Alex interrupts, begging Violet to turn and leave. The situation is way over their heads, and beings like the poet are unpredictable. No good can come of staying here. And that is precisely what we do. It's possible to fight the poet by talking to her again, but she's incredibly powerful and instantly TPK'd me when I tried. What happens if you win? I have no idea. Good luck finding out. However, that abstract demon sent us here to die, so it's gotta pay. Those are the rules. We decide at this point that we're ready. There's still tons to do if we wander the world and try to get into trouble, but we want our memories back, dang it. I'll give you a warning that the game will not. Venturing into the door beneath the Poet of Blood's home will take you to a point of no return with a tremendous jump in difficulty. If I could do it all over again, I'd have done more stuff before going in here. It is seriously brutal. On the other side, Violet finds a strange, half-finished area. Shoal is here, and he says he's still working on the place. There are people, too, the higher educated, rendered only in black and white as the Poet of Paint was. Perhaps they're some sort of metaphysical beings, or maybe we just can't perceive them very well due to our lowly RUR status. They're friendly enough, however, and excited to be moving into this new neighborhood. Pob and Bobadope are somehow already inside. They must have teleported, and they explain that the new residents are flocking to the Wooden Ocean after our televised meeting with the symphony made us famous. As we've seen, not all the attention is positive, but it's clear at least that we've become movers and shakers despite having barely any idea what's going on. It's just like my YouTube career. The enemies here are worse than any we've met so far. See this Gundam-looking guy? That's called a Kaiser, and they're just the worst. They have very high attack and defense, and most of them throw paralysis around like it's going out of style. We wind up having to avoid fighting just to make it through, which should have been our first clue that we were unprepared for this place. Alas. Finally, we pass into a golden void. Several higher educated are standing around an angel and a pillar of light. This must be the memory extractor. The angel seems surprised to learn that we're all able to look directly at her and hear her voice. She rapidly drops all pretext of being some unearthly being and has, by Wooden Ocean standards, a completely normal conversation with Violet. She asks who her artist is, a question Violet has no answer to. Is it the Poet of Paint, or was she simply admiring our portrait? This is unclear, but I suspect poets are a step below artists. The poets we've met build things in RUR, assembling towns and dungeons. While the Poet of Paint seemed stranger and more powerful than our buddy Pob, judging by the name, she could be doing something similar, arranging pre-existing art in a way that real-life poets arrange pre-existing words. Alex mentions that here in the hotel, ancient earthlings are seen as primordial gods. I have no proof or even good evidence to support this claim, but I believe the angel asking about Violet's artist is referring to the player, or the real-life artist who drew her sprites and portrait. Or perhaps the developer, Leif Ian Anderson, who wrote her. In any case, or even if none of these are the case, the question goes way over Violet's head. It's clear that despite everything, Violet is only working with a bug's eye perspective that the angel simply cannot understand, and vice versa. Though Violet is unbothered by the angel, Alex and Amelia are struggling to keep their orphans down in the presence of divinity. The angel mercifully teleports them away and directs Violet to gaze into the light, offering a seizure warning as she does. For those of you watching at home, I suppose I'll offer the same. It's about to get psychedelic. We see swirling colors. We catch a glimpse on a television of a blue-haired woman who could only be Mesra. We see a castle and a forest. This must be Crow Island, the place where Violet grew up. We see a cluster of angels gathered around Mesra. We see Mesra and her children, a young Violet, Marcus, and off in one corner, the adult Violet. We see a fight. We're back in the present, but something has gone wrong. Violet is beset on all sides by demons, but suffused with some awesome power, she slaughters hordes of them like they were made of paper. We see the poet of paint standing before Violet's portrait. We see the TV lawyer reacting in sudden surprise. Violet has telepathically contacted him, but she's still uneducated, and despite her wild surge of strength, can't make heads or tails of any of this. She's still a babe in the woods. The lawyer explains over the telepathic link that the demon doors were his minions. He sent them to kill Violet, but she must have been empowered by recovering her memories. Unfortunately, she burned up most of that power fighting her way through them. The lawyer explains that he has killed the symphony and that he's going to become God, but only temporarily until his master arrives, and she'll be here soon. Perhaps impressed by all he's seen, or maybe even still grateful that she fixed his internet connection, the TV lawyer offers Violet a deal. Stay out of his business, and he'll stay out of hers. The ride ends with a glimpse of a gigantic figure striding across the ocean. An announcement is made throughout the Infinite Hotel. All uneducated are now educated. All morality is now doubled. All residents are free to move about as they please. There are several exceptions which are now on lockdown. Among them, Sector 6, the Wooden Ocean. Violet awakens to hear somebody apologizing to her, calling her Mom. They ask that she meet with her sister-in-law. She crosses a purple void as the voice tells her to stick with Alex and Amelia. On a narrow walkway, God knows where, she meets another angel. The angel tells her that what she remembered in the Pillar of Light, Mesra, the angels, and the Coven, happened many years ago, and that further explanation must wait. The symphony, though defeated, has managed to wound the new artist. Violet is the only one left who can stand up to it. The angel explains that the Infinite Hotel, an afterlife and hub for thousands of worlds, is the greatest expression ever built. The new artist is from a rival expression, and out of jealousy plans to destroy the hotel. The hotel staff have been largely wiped out, so it falls to Violet to stop this jealous artist. Though the Symphony of Carbon, their servants, and even Violet's own flesh and blood tried to do away with her, they now understand that she's the only hope this place has left. Violet is controlled by an unknown force, therefore her actions cannot be accounted for by either side. With her last breath, the angel, Marcus's wife, teleports Violet back to the staging ground for an apocalypse, the poetry of Rust. The place is a glitched-out ego death, the peak of a bad trip. Distorted images hang in midair. Discolored enemy graphics loom over streets without proper collision. Very little makes sense anymore. It seems the TV lawyer has achieved his divine ambition, but he's made a hash of things in the process. We meet a witch here. As it turns out, she's a ghost who recently purchased this body. Violet's unwittingly become a reality TV star. Her exploits are known throughout the hotel, and now everyone wants to be a witch. It takes a minute for her to realize that she's talking to the real Violet. She starts fangirling out when she realizes that she's here to defeat the jealous artist and save everyone. The art, as it turns out, is from an artist called Obsidian, who drew the faces to Wooden Ocean. Ken Foreman's gallery is next door. So there's maybe our answer, or part of it at least. Obsidian is Violet's artist. But we are not Obsidian, so maybe Violet's artist, the source of her power, and her ability to act in ways the higher powers can't account for are three different things. The witch explains that near the galleries she'll find the poetry of law. From there, it's a walk through the forest to where the Symphony of Carbon used to be. If the TV lawyer and his new artist are anywhere, that's where they'll be. And then I guess she explodes? It's possible the TV lawyer took her out, but nothing's really clear anymore. Violet finds herself in the new poetry of law. This is where the TV lawyer brought her after Marcus killed her. It's different, for sure, but it's got the same shape. The place is inhabited by just a few people, a ghost or two, a shopkeeper who I believe shares the level of our ghost town's shop, and the poet of metal. Palm is actually someone who appeared in our town before, offering stat-boosting candy and incredible weapons in exchange for far more realism shards than we ever found. I didn't mention him before as he seems like a New Game Plus kind of thing. In the southwest corner of the area, there's a crystal we can use to visit the talent tree. It took me an embarrassingly long time to find this thing. In a bedroom, we find Alex and Amelia. They were worried that Violet had died. She's been missing for weeks, and they confirm what we've been able to gather so far. The puppet that the lawyers sent led an army of monsters against the symphony. When things were at their worst, Violet emerged from the pillar of light, changed into something no one's ever seen before. She slaughtered all of the monsters, claiming they were not romantic. Romantic is a term that gets tossed around here and there, and it appears to be a quality that Mesra the architect finds esteemable. Now it's the demons who have questions. Namely, they want to know who Violet really is. While they were searching for her, they came across a copy of The Wooden Ocean, and she wasn't in it. Violet reacts to this statement with, unsurprisingly, confusion. Frustrated and no longer bound by the dead symphony's orders, Alex tells Violet the true nature of her world. It, like all the others in the hotel, is a simulation, or perhaps it's more appropriate to call it artificial. This sector is based on the last fantasy novel ever written on ancient Earth, a book called The Wooden Ocean. The story of The Wooden Ocean is that Marcus Marillion comes to the edge of the world to do battle with his mother. In the book, all of his sisters are killed off without ever being named. There is no Violet. This is why Alex was confused about Violet's clothes, and why he said she's not dressed like anyone on the roster. As a local, she's supposed to live her life unwittingly emulating a 2 billion-year-old work of fiction. Maybe after that, she'd get to become a ghost and do it all over again, but that part's not exactly clear. Somehow, she's gone completely off the script without ever being educated as to the nature of the sector. This should not be possible. Amelia puts it in simpler terms. Everyone here is an actor. The hotel, the theater, the Wooden Ocean is the stage, and ancient humanity are the costumes. Violet is not really a witch. Alex and Amelia are not really demons. What's happening is all very real, but at the same time it's only a pantomime, a shadow play at the end of time, where the rules of time and space are malleable. Humanity escaped mortality and the finite nature of time itself by creating a space beyond death's reach, where human creativity can go on creating forever and ever. What sets Violet apart from Alex and Amelia is that the two siblings have always known, by design, that they were part of a simulation. Thus the cagey behavior and the seeming lack of morals. If nothing matters because none of it's real, then why not eat an orphan every now and then? Violet is stricken. Deep down, she's always known the world wasn't real, but it's worse than that. She's not even real in an RUR sense. She's neither a real person nor a fictional character. She's literally nobody in a way that seems entirely unique. She asks Alex why Marcus killed her. He begins to answer that he thought that she may have killed someone important to get her second element. It seems like he's going to reveal that it was her mother or her sisters or maybe even her son, but he cuts himself off. Sometime soon, the jealous artist is going to arrive and destroy absolutely everything, and none of this will have ever mattered. Trillions of people, ghosts, demons, whatever, they'll all lose their lives, maybe even for real, and the greatest expression ever created will be gone. Violet agrees. It's time for action. Words can come later. We head east into the woods. Before they were wiped out, the choir lent us some strength, jumping us up about 20 levels. It seems like a lot. Unfortunately, we are about to learn that this is nowhere near enough. The enemies here are so brutally difficult that I immediately got a sinking feeling in my stomach. We seemingly can't win any fights, which means we can't gain any levels, and we certainly won't be able to defeat the multiple bosses ahead. Worse, the game only lets you save one slot at a time. I can't reload a previous save because I compulsively saved as soon as I saw a save point. Meaning we're stuck in here where the only battles left are impossible. Are we soft-locked? Not quite. There's a portrait of Violet hanging up on the wall, perhaps a gift from the Poet of Paint. If we touch it, we're prompted to start a new game plus. The fact that we've been shown that the save points, levels, and other game systems are all diegetically present within the fiction should give us pause here. Violet is uniquely empowered by her artist. On top of that, this painting, presumably painted by her artist, allows her to start a new game plus to become even more powerful. Her memories before arriving here in the Wooden Ocean were sealed away, just like she would lose them again if she took this option. Is it possible that this isn't the first time Violet's been here? Could she be unmoored from time, helping her younger self along? We don't have an answer, and we're not exactly going to be given one, but it is something to consider. New Game Plus reduces all of our stats by 90%, but leaves our money, equipment, skills, talents, talent points, charisma, intelligence, and AP, as well as any progress we've made with the Ghost Town, Ghost Ship, and Golem intact. If we're smart about it, and especially if we've saved some candy, we could use this to start over, blow through the early game, and reach higher heights than we ever did in our first run. But we haven't saved any candy, and our stats are only in the double digits. Losing 90% of them at this point would almost be a reset to 0. While it might net us some advantages in terms of repeatable rewards like candy and puzzle pieces, I can't see a lot of upsides in our specific situation. We will not be using New Game Plus. We are committed to seeing this run through, if it's at all possible. We spend a while exploring the forest and eventually discover that some of the enemies here are ogres. If you remember all the way back to the North Codice mines, orcs and ogres are extremely susceptible to poison and will often get too sick to fight if we poison them. We discover that this works here. We can use Amelia's poison and toxic arrows to shut them down, which gives us just enough room to start chipping them away. If a fight doesn't have an ogre, or if the enemy accompanying the ogre is too strong, we have to run away, but with a lot of consumables and some good old-fashioned determination, we can grind here. In this manner, we are able to meticulously take out a few enemies. Because we're so badly outleveled, the XP rewards are substantial, and we gain levels with almost every win. Eventually, we're just barely strong enough to get into the next area, which we immediately recognize as the Poetry of Rust, the replica of North Codice that we found buried in the Infinite Hotel, where Simon told us that Marcus had been taken. Here, there's a well which spawns enemies that grant triple EXP. Now we're talking. As before, we use this to start grinding, and we do not stop for days. I streamed this process over on Patreon, and I'd liken it to getting several root canals. Fishing for ogres just to get into fights which can take upwards of 20 minutes, fights which it is still very easy to lose, is a tremendous effort. We burn through hundreds of potions and resurrection items, but each time we scrape out a win, we save, we hit the shop, and we come back stronger. After many hours of this, we're able to reach escape velocity. We can beat things other than ogres. Soon we're taking on harder and harder enemies. We gain over 40 levels doing this. If I had to guess, that's about 200 battles, with each clocking 5 to 20 minutes and frequent game overs in between. Patch notes that have dropped since I finished my run suggest that Carbon has been significantly buffed and the enemies here are much less spongy than they were. So if this is putting you off, consider that the game is still a work in progress, and your experience may be a lot better than mine. I'm not a big fan of grinding. I have to admit that if I was not doing this for the channel, I would have put the game down here. But what I will say is that across 75 hours of gameplay, the combat never got boring. Defeating these giant tanky enemies felt like playing Monster Hunter. I was always teetering on the edge of a loss, pulling off complex strategies and enjoying the rush of victory every time I won. There's a lot you can say about this game, and not all of it is great, but to wring that emotion out of the tired old RPG Maker battle engine is really something special. Most of the enemies at this point have astronomical physical defense and hit hard with all kinds of elemental damage. The fact that our party works almost entirely around physical damage makes it more painful than it might have otherwise been. Luckily, we have many tools to debuff down enemy defenses. Osteoclast, Mark, and Sunder give us just a bit of a head start, with 3 defense debuffs on a target by the second round. It's then pretty easy to pivot to dropping rituals on the party to boost their damage while Alex puts up a wall and takes hits. From there, Amelia's the star of the show, regularly doing 4 and 5 digit damage. Once an enemy goes down to half health, the rest of the fight is usually a cleanup job. It's just getting there that's the problem. Through over 40 levels, we get a fair amount of AP. We pick up Cortical Wall for Violet, giving us 2 walls that reduce all incoming damage, as well as Quarter Life. Amelia gets Heart and Headshot as well as Toxic Volley. Alex gets Mortal Strike and Mass Mercury, which deal significant damage and attempt to confuse all enemies respectively. But we're still not strong enough. The gains we're getting by leveling are substantial, but pretty measly in the grand scheme of things. I take run after run at the area boss, and we still can't make any headway. It is at this point, and no sooner, that I discover the Talent Crystal. I mentioned it earlier, but I'd been at this for days, wondering how on earth we were going to defeat the final boss, when I realized we had many talent points unspent that we could use right here. We grab everything in sight that gives us stat boosts. One benefit to having missed the talent board for so long is that we have enough points to pick up Patience, which costs 5 talent points but grants 8, netting us 3 as a bonus. We also grab Immunity to Radiation. That one is critical. So critical, in fact, that I'm not sure the game would be beatable without it. Radiation is one of those things that seems tuned for the player to use rather than the enemies. It feels like peanuts when Violet casts it at somebody, but it can be a one-turn KO when it hits us, and the debuffs are nasty. Knowing that we're going up against some powerful spellcasters, we grab resistance to several other element and status effects. We also grab an ability that lets us summon a potion ghost without debuffing our party. I chose Gravity for our ghost, which worked out pretty well. We name him Spud and we give him a staff so he can use defensive barrier skills. As mentioned elsewhere, I'm sure water or maybe earth would have been solid as well. With this, and a bit more grinding to round out our strength, we're ready to press forward, but we should take one last chance to consider the story so far. At some point in the Earth's distant past, 2 billion years ago, humanity discovered a way to travel past the edge of time and exploit the malleable properties of reality beyond the edge of existence to create an afterlife, to which dying humans could be sent to dwell forever in a sort of giant server, the Infinite Hotel, hosting thousands of different simulations, with the wooden ocean being just one such sim. That's not to say that any of this is taking place on actual computers. We aren't shown the underpinning nature of the world and would probably not be equipped to understand it if we were. In this milieu, humanity split into strata. If the uneducated residents of the wooden ocean are really people at all, and they certainly seem to be, then they are the lowest, living out fake lives without even realizing it. Above them are the educated, like the people of Wooden Edge. They know the wooden ocean is fake and treat it like a sort of vacation destination, like Westworld maybe. Above those, it appears to get hazy. We know Alex and Amelia are no mere vacationers. They appear to be playing more complex roles that require that they understand the world better than those around them. Above the demons are the poets, who live within the simulation and design and build areas and events within it. I suspect Shoal is in this category. Above that, we have the angels, beings so powerful that most lesser life forms can't even tolerate their presence. The TV lawyer and the dimensional demons may fit into this category as well. Angels are the staff and stewards of the Infinite Hotel, overseeing many worlds, while a being like Alex, being a couple of steps down the ladder, seems to be more of an on-site employee in one world at a time. Surpassing even the angels would be divine beings themselves, such as Mesra the Architect, or the TV lawyer now that he's claimed the mantle of divinity. A god rules a single expression, such as the Infinite Hotel, and by extension, all worlds within it. Ghosts, presumably the true form of humans dwelling in the afterlife, enter specific worlds and take on roles, either as themselves or by being reborn into new bodies. They then live out their lives attempting to earn morality. Way back in the Codice Mines, we met an educated man who was attempting to earn morality by participating actively in the story of the Wooden Ocean, even though what he was describing was only a bit part. Meanwhile, folks in the Wooden Edge were hoping to earn morality through extreme displays of piety. Similarly, murdering people seems to have a negative impact on one's morality. Morality appears to be used as a sort of currency. Perhaps it allows ghosts to be reborn into better lives, or to gain promotions within the metaphysical hierarchy of the hotel. Valez had inherited a great deal of the stuff from his family and hoped to earn enough to join the ranks of the Symphony of Carbon. Marcus was meant to be the main character. The book that this world was based on did not feature anybody named Violet. All of Marcus's sisters died early on in the book. Furthermore, Marcus in the book was at odds with his mother, Mesra, and came to the edge of the world to defeat her. But that's not what happened here. Mesra died before Violet even arrived, and Marcus certainly didn't kill her. We've established that Violet is the fly in the ointment. Marcus fled to the edge of the world to meet not with Mesra but the Symphony of Carbon. He knew there was an imminent threat to the hotel and, believing it was Violet, conspired to have her killed. This would have been convenient for the jealous artist, who had sent their agent to the TV lawyer to prepare an invasion, but he was obliged by his master to rescue Violet after Marcus personally assassinated her. It wouldn't do to risk everything on an invasion only to be thwarted by whatever third party was in control of Violet. They waited until the jealous artist's arrival to strike, but were too late. Violet had accessed her memories, realized her true nature, and struck down the lawyer's forces before she could be assassinated a second time. Surely the lawyer knew we would be coming, and so we find him lying in wait just north of the false Codice, joined by a powerful demon, his puppets, and a few low-ranking lawyers. We're surprised to have a bit of help ourselves. Our golem shows up, making another solid case for leveling the guy as much as possible, and with him are the last remaining angels. Unfortunately, these are the weaker sort, but that's okay. By now, we can surely pick up the slack. The TV lawyer is furious at Violet's rejection of the truce. He wasn't allowed to kill her before, but he won't let his chance slip away now. His artist, he says, wanted to know who Violet's was. They wanted to know just who was lending her so much strength and what was helping her at every turn. Well, let's show him. The fight is a blowout. 6 enemies is more than the game usually throws at us, and many of these get to act twice every turn. It's all we can do to throw up barriers and try to drop status effects on the group. As we should have expected, they are much, much more powerful than we are, but we have something going for us. The angels helping us also benefit from all the talents we've bought, making them monstrously powerful. Throwing up barriers and crowd controlling however we can, we're able to buy them just enough time to poke a hole in the enemy's ranks, and then another, and another. It takes everything we had, but at last the TV lawyer and his forces are dead. Regrettably, the effort was too much for the angels, who extinguished themselves to get us over the finish line. Violet, Alex, Amelia, and Spud are alone as they head to the portal to meet the jealous artist. It speaks to Violet in distorted text, like it's not all that intelligent, or maybe it's just talking on a wavelength that's hard to understand. But Violet don't need to understand. She spent this whole adventure trying to understand, and where's it gotten her? No, Violet came here to kill this thing before it kills her, and that's all she needs to do. So the battle begins, and Violet and the demons find themselves fighting the entire area we were just looking at. We can even see Violet there, or rather an image of Violet, standing before a portal colored all white like a blank canvas. It's actually two enemies, reality and expression heals. Reality is the wider image, while expression is the blank canvas inside. We take out reality only to have it replaced with a distorted version. Reality. Once both realities are gone, expression is revealed to be nothing more than the game's whole entire title screen, a pair of glowing purple eyes behind the TV lawyer. The trio bring expression down, healing and throwing up barriers as the attacks come in harder and harder, and it's replaced by intention, the same image, only now instead of white light coming through the TV lawyer's screen, we see a glimpse of distorted purple and green, a being called Nosredna. Defeating intention leaves Nosredna exposed. We can now see that it's a heavily distorted human face. And while of course Violet and the gang have no way of knowing this, we know that Nosredna is simply Anderson backwards. We're literally fighting the developer, or at least his twisted reflection. Nosredna hits hard with gravity and physical damage while frequently sprinkling in holy and thread. Just keeping the team alive feels almost impossible now. We have barely any time to damage him and he's always regenerating. We throw out every debuff we can think of, but thanks to his massive stats and the fact that we can't gain any tempo, it feels like we're not getting anywhere. So the fight grinds on in a seeming stalemate. Then, suddenly, we realize we've gotten him down to half HP. This opens up just enough of an advantage that we can consistently start to hurt him. We keep up the fight until suddenly we've won. The jealous artist is gone. We flash back to a young Violet on Crow Island, a little brown-haired girl tending a flower bush named Rosaline, the same name as Alex's lost love. It turns out the plant may be her only friend, if we're not counting the succubus that serves as her nanny. The other witches, presumably all sisters, all seem to hate the poor girl. We soon learn that this is because her birth broke a prophecy, one that said that Mesra's final child would be a boy, and that this would lead the coven to greatness. Marcus was meant to be that final son, the main character. So what happened? The witches on the island have a few strange things to say to Violet. One catches herself talking too much and accuses Violet of somehow compelling her to do so. Another lets slip that she's working for the jealous artist, though young Violet couldn't possibly understand what this means. She's instructed to go and find her brother. He has allegedly met an angel, and Mesra seems to want something from her. Eventually, she tracks him down on the beach, where he tells her something unbelievable. That he met a man, and the man showed him a book with his entire life, everything he's ever done or will ever do, written in it. In her palace, Queen Mesra muses over a portrait that we've seen before. A portrait of Violet. She says that Simon has told her that it is a painting of Mesra at some point in the future, when she's acquired power over every element. We learn that Violet was an immaculate conception, formed without a father and entirely a surprise to her mother. And that's all we're left with. But it's more information than we might think. Playing through the game a second time, it becomes clear that everything holds some hidden meaning. Meeting goofy NPCs the second time around, what first may have seemed like fourth wall breaking jokes from the developer are actually completely serious. The random kooks we meet are tourists, dumb puppies wandering into a medieval simulation and acting like assholes because that's what tourists do. Often, when Violet meets educated people or demons, they mistake her for Mesra. Mesra wasn't supposed to be dead, and Violet shouldn't exist, so who is she? All evidence would seem to point to the fact that Violet is Mesra herself. Violet, born from nowhere, with more elements than a witch ought to have, with her memories missing and her mother mysteriously dead, is somehow her reincarnation. Simon, who knew both women, confuses the two. He finds Violet's hair color unusual, and when he turns on her, he comes at her with a degree of venom that seems entirely inappropriate for the lonely little girl he knew on Crow Island. In the family tomb, Violet discovered there was nobody buried. Mesra was willing to kill to keep this a secret. Marcus's writings make reference to some illness that Violet didn't know she had, They talk about Violet making a deal with her, bemoaning that she was responsible for killing all of their siblings. The Dimensional Demon notes that a mysterious ritual that Violet was involved in has gone wrong. He speaks deferentially to her and offers to help her out. When he's forced into a fight, all he can say is, "I'm sorry, Mesra." Lady Green, too, recognizes Violet, but realizes that something terrible has happened when Violet does not recognize her. She says, "You're her, aren't you?" Simon's words, and Lady Green's, and the Dimensional Demon's would make more sense if they were not speaking to Violet, but to Mesra. Violet, unlocking her memories at the extractor, is shown not stories from her own life, but from Mesra's, the founding of Crow Island and all that came after. Many of these are events that happened decades, if not centuries, before her birth. The Dimensional Demon was right. Something did go wrong during the ritual. This is speculation, but the evidence appears to suggest that Mesra attempted to body hop into Violet. For whatever reason, it didn't quite work. Though she lost some of her memories, Violet retained her former identity, apparently thwarting her mother's grab for immortality and throwing the best-laid plans of any number of angels and demons into disarray. Without hard confirmation, we can't say for sure that this is the right conclusion, but for now it's the best we've got. Perhaps future updates will clarify all of this, or prove it completely wrong. While I was working on this video, a second ending was released. That's what we've just seen, with footage provided graciously by Rilko. Previously, when I beat the game, a different ending played out, one that seemed to continue the story. This scene is to my knowledge not currently accessible in the game, but we can still check it out. 9 days later, Alex, Amelia, and Violet are walking through the Infinite Hotel. With both the angels and the would-be gods dead, there's nobody left to manage this place. It's dark, the elevators don't work, and there's no telling how long it will take to get home in a hotel that's literally endless. Now that the danger is past, Violet is left to contend with the terrible things she's done to gain her power, and the thought that she'd just as soon never use magic again. Luckily, she's with the two people in the world who probably understand that best. It may be a very long time before they get out of this place, but the hotel and all the worlds and people are safe, and if nothing else, our heroes have got each other. And that more or less sums the game up, or at least the parts that Rilks and I could discover. Normally, a large part of the research process on a game like this would involve engaging with the community, scoping out the subreddit, chatting with fans, and maybe even the developer on Discord. As of this writing, the Wooden Ocean has none of these things. The interpretations here are all coming from me, some help from Rilks, a couple of my patrons over on the Discord, and the bits and pieces we could glean from the Steam page. So, keeping in mind that this analysis is likely a little more flawed than usual, what was this all about? This is not the first game that I've played that's used the idea of a world being some kind of a Matrix-style simulation as a twist, but it's the first time it didn't feel like the writer had made a gigantic mistake. Normally, this sort of thing is infuriating because it invalidates everything that came before as meaningless and artificial. The Wooden Ocean largely dodges this issue by not making it much of a secret. It's certainly a surprise to Violet, but the first few books Simon finds describe an artificial afterlife, and the fact that he was isekai'd down a well might immediately suggest to the player what sort of story this is. Additionally, the irreverent tone that everything outside the main cast is treated with makes it hard to get too invested in the humdrum fantasy playing out on the surface. At first, this may seem like the story is refusing to commit to itself. It's only on a second playthrough where we can really see what's going on. These people are bored. Even the uneducated seem to have a sense that they've been going on the same merry-go-round for far too long. People are goofing off instead of living their lives. And why shouldn't they be? The cosmic forces that invisibly rule them are more interested in watching Netflix than overseeing reality. Even the demons let loose to terrorize the populace can hardly care about what they're doing anymore. We get very little of the villain's motivations, but they're spelled out a bit better in one of the book series randomly found throughout the world. The inferior artist is jealous, and instead of creating, is driven to destroy. I'm reminded more than anything of Space Funeral. Without spoiling that very short game, it's largely about the will to create and the concept of finding a unique way to express oneself artistically. Violet, if she was a character at all, was meant to be a random NPC in this world, but somehow she wound up becoming the main character. Her journey took her through deeper and deeper layers of reality until she faced Nosredna, the jealous artist, and with the help of the player, overcame them. Nosredna's name suggests, at least to me, that they are nothing more than developer Leif Ian Anderson's urge to delete the game instead of continuing to work on it. By playing through the Wooden Ocean, by having that experience, good or bad, we gave Anderson a reason to keep at it. A viewer's experience can be all that it takes to justify the hundreds or thousands of hours poured into a piece of art. And, in a very real way, the expression has been saved. If Anderson chose to delist and delete his game today, the experiences of the people who played it wouldn't simply vanish. This video wouldn't go anywhere. I mean, I'd probably take it down if he asked, but anyone who saw it would have similarly participated in that process. It would remain an enduring part of their memory. By playing the game, we have saved Violet's world in a very real way, and especially now, when the game is so unknown, that feels oddly significant. For now, however, it's the end of the journey. I'm certain I missed a lot despite my best efforts, and I likely even missed some major story content. Normally I'd be able to draw upon other reviews, supplemental materials, or the fan community to help piece together the story better, but the Wooden Ocean doesn't yet have those things. But that's not to say that it won't. While the game clearly isn't for everyone, it's obviously a diamond in the rough, eagerly waiting to be discovered. The Wooden Ocean is available on Steam, listed as Wooden Ocean. You can also find it on itch.io, and links to both will be provided in the description. At the time of this recording, the price is $20. However, the game is coincidentally scheduled to go on sale on Steam during the first half of June. Being such a beefy indie title, it's well worth full price, and the developer certainly deserves some compensation for his years of hard work, so don't feel too bad if you miss it. Speaking of, I'd like to thank the channel patrons. If you're interested in becoming one, join us over on patreon.com/worm_girl. We have a patron-only Discord where we all hang out and patron-only streams, usually around once a week. Special thanks to Cody Gratner, Nate Corbin, Apollo 900, Cheryl Blossom, Queen of the Bees, Blake Campbell, Nictus, Hugmeyer, Jacqueline Sane, Christopher Simmons, Malcolm Alamtazar Harris, Thomas Christ, U Dubum, Ashes, Antonis Papadakis, L Sluggo, Gang Warfare Enthusiast, Dylan, Damus, Romad275, Webby, Gradius, So-So, Ozzy, K, Hey It's Casey, RPG, Queen Carmina, Primrose, Catgirl Maoist, Mercy Grin, Jack Barnett, Soyo, Qui-Gon Tim, Josie Nakamura, Anardi Guy, Nick Bad Fan Sub, Dagda.otd, Dylan Chapon, Time Traveling Drug Cartel, Grace McCain, Jerry Turgan, Vic, Aria Midnight, Brent Ills, Nick Armijo, Ellie Fox, Jorge Rodriguez, Waterplant, Null, Jim, Sunny Warrior, Roan Berg, Vasey, Frog Voice, Samantha Merriweather Marquis, Oddies, Binary Robot, Alex Huard, B. Jensen, From Jay with Love, Corey Vindelspecht, Lug Ray, Nasra, the Doom and Terror of Modern Man, Zeeks, Greg Records, Anani Mouse, Too Many Cats, Di Doan, Snowy Dark, Timothy McQuillan, DM Fangborn, Toter, Chris Astley, That Nice Young Man, Fireless the Wireless, Elliot, NJ Lever, Maxwell Greason, Kane D, Sam Gardner, Vrya Skynan, Raylan, Alex Sanchez, Squiddo, Slow Dancer, Corey Soto. I turned myself into a garbage mobile game, Morty. I'm Raid Shadow Legends Rick. Kenny W, Bindle, Aphidris, Gortena, Lawrence Reich Jr., Legitimate Hap, Nothing Man, Matthew H. May, Captain Insano, Balsamic Salad, Radical, Imhest, Crimson Grain, Biggie Swizz, Pester Chum Handle Abbreviation CG, Dust in the Light, Ghost Juice, Tomo, Yabol, Ciradoon, Cherry Pez, DM Getty, Toast, Sander, Louis High, Lexi Luke, Joseph Lupo, Mantha065, Jonah, Filthy Kremling, Tyler, Arvamera, Ride the Buffalo, Leto, Vice Chemo, Gooby, Best Jester, George Lee, Sul Matul, Motov, Potato, Ratboy Slim, Punk Bold, Docile, Hans Vitamin, Fool, Thomas Rowling, Gabriel N., Marcos Azevedo, Freya Katra Erlingsdottir, Skanes, Via Belvale, The Dark Tetrad, Sadism, Psychopathy, Machiavellianism, Narcissism, Hey Chib, Mood, Guy, Wayne Garipi, Settings, Mark McGowan, Daniel Bow, Sticky Rick, Orlon the Dog, Mac, Cassicist, Lose the Booze, Snail Mail, Melty, Cyan, Myanmar Cat Daffy, Mommy Colonel of the Revolution Yan, Dr. Glocktar, Bloody M, Timothy Gallagher, Prickma, Lumpy Oats, Best Tiger, The Dennis 13, Josh Bays, Granola Barnaby, Ian Cook, Aradia Vitalia Anouk, Francho, AJ, Canyon, Arenchos, Norgomder, Pandaroo, Beep, Moonly Tears, Florante de la Cruz, No Man 2000, PH, Mothman, Hyrax Syriacus, Logan Morgangard, Aaron E.B., Steph, Guro, Shatan, Vrampter, River, Here Kitty, pss, pss, cat cat meow meow, pss, 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 pss. Oh my god, Kitty! Valeria, Charles, Peter Chauvin, Raglion, Brian Smith, Chris Rovers, William Nelson, Emil Wieskens, Nina Wednesdays, Blight, Soup Clown, and Ty Perry. Thank you all so very much.